In the part one, I referenced one document that we've created, our best practices agreement, which is going to help you have that initial conversation with your supervisor about what your practicum experience is going to be about and what your supervision experience is going to be like. And that document looks like this. Agreement of best practices for supervision. And what you're going to do, Dr. Rivera is going to put on the video here, you'll see the link to our website where we have all of these documents for you to download. So this will be something you'll do your very first week when you meet with your site supervisor. You'll need to download and make 3 copies, and that just saves some convenience of having to not recopy things after signatures. So just have your site supervisor and you sign all 3 copies and bring that to your first supervision meeting with your faculty supervisor, or if you haven't met, then you can bring it the next week. Your faculty supervisor will sign it, and then everybody keeps a copy. But what this covers, again, is it covers all the qualifications for a site supervisor, but what we're most interested in you and your site supervisor discussing are the site supervisor administrative roles and responsibilities and clinical roles and responsibilities. Within this, it's going to talk about just what exactly we expect of your supervision experience, and this is to create hopefully the ideal supervision experience. And everybody, most of your supervisors are going to be doing all of this anyway, but we've had situations in the past where supervision didn't go so well and the students didn't necessarily feel maybe brave enough to go in and talk to their site supervisor about what they were dissatisfied with. So we come in and help, which we're happy to do when we have to. And that usually does help things quite a bit when we show up. But hopefully this will help you know this is what my site supervisor should be doing, and if they're not doing some of these, especially some that are more critical than others, you'll have that knowledge and hopefully more courage to go back and say, remember in that best practices agreement we talked about how we need to meet every week for an hour, at least an average out of an hour, and we haven't met the last 3 weeks. Hopefully, don't let it go 3 weeks. But we've got places for you to fill it in, so that makes it a little more like a contract feeling. Your site might just have individual supervision, or you might also have group supervision, but you need to have individual supervision or triadic, which would mean you and one other intern at the most. So that's a minimum, is the individual, and the group supervision is kind of a bonus. Also, things like what your site supervisor will be doing, helping you conceptualize cases and learning about treatment planning. Hopefully they're going to be able to review some of your videos that you're going to make and show in faculty supervision. It also covers our K-Grep objectives for each course. There's a version of this for Practicum Internship 1, Internship 2. And some site supervisors get a little overwhelmed with all the objectives and they think, great, look at this big long list of things for us to do. But the course objectives are what we're responsible for covering. Obviously what you're doing at your site helps with that, but we are doing things all semester that are going to work through these objectives. We just like for your site supervisor to know what's going on here at Lipscomb so it can balance out what they're doing and if they have any questions or anything. It also lays out the faculty supervision roles and as well as your student duties and responsibilities. So these are things that we expect that you're going to do. So I would encourage you to read those and be able to talk about those with your site supervisor. So again, this will be hopefully your first meeting with your site supervisor. And of course they're going to have things to show you that are specific to their site, such as here's where you file things, here's our protocol on such and such, and this will just get blended in with what orientation that they're going to do as well.
And I think one of the things that we really want you to have through doing this with your supervisor is to create a great foundation in which to build. We want you guys to have the best experience you can have, and this is our almost like giving you some direction, giving you something to kind of have in hand that will be at least that foundation for you guys to build upon.
Right. Just like for our faculty supervision, we hope that we can create a very safe place with you and your group so that you can feel safe to put things out there and grow and explore in the way that you need to develop into the counselor that you're going to be. And we want that same thing for your site supervisor.
Exactly.
And sometimes we've found that site supervisors, that y'all talk about nitty gritty things like where to file the papers, and I need your notes in 48 hours, and here's some things not to do. But sometimes it gets neglected to actually talk about the relationship, which is something that we often do in counseling as well. We talk with our clients all about things that are going on in their life, but we don't always talk about how are we doing. So this is a model for that. One thing I forgot to mention up front that you can also download, you may not want to print, see how thick that is. Of course, it's printed on one side, but this is our Clinical Experiences Handbook. If you have not seen a copy of that yet, you can download it as well off the website, and this is going to answer any of your questions, hopefully, on kind of what some of the expectations are about what are my hours that I need to get. On page 19, you'll find a table that summarizes your hours if you forget, if your supervisor forgets. But the mid-section of this is really about your actual clinical experience. And then there's also a discussion of your notebook. And you'll need to get probably at least a 2, sometimes students even get 3-inch binders, because you'll end up putting a lot of stuff in there. And this explains what needs to go in your notebook. And each semester, you will be required to show us your notebook at the end of the semester, and it'll have your logs, it'll have information about your agency, it'll have treatment summaries from your clients with no names of your clients, and we'll talk about that more, but a lot of that is laid out for you in here, as well as all the forms are back here as well, but they're also separately on the website where you can print them off without the page number. Okay, so logs. How do you write down your time? You want to keep track of everything you're doing. The whole time you're at your site, that counts as site hours, and within that, you're seeing your face-to-face. So when we say you need 150 hours for Practicum, 40 of that needs to be face-to-face. That's not 190 hours, that's 150, with 40 of that being face-to-face. So what you're going to be doing, I'm going to show you the log, but you can look at it for yourself, is coding everything. You'll put the date, you'll pick a code like individual counseling or an intake, family and couples therapy, some other type of contact with your client. Maybe you're consulting with the nurse practitioner down the hallway, or maybe you're making phone calls to help out your client. Group counseling, psychoeducation, then your indirect service being things like your preparation for your clients, doing your paperwork, even the amount of time you're spending counting up your hours, any kinds of training, or other things that you may be consulting about your client. You may be helping out with community presentations or some kind of community event. And then you've got your supervision, individual and group, for both Lipscomb and your site. So you're just going to code that. You can put in your activity detail, maybe your client first initial, so you can remember which client you saw that day. You may need 1 sheet per day. You may fit 3 days on this sheet. It just depends on how many things you need to break down. Some students fill it out kind of per hour, so they keep track of it all day. Some of them, I think, at the end of the day can reflect and say, okay, I saw 3 clients, and then I did about 2 hours of paperwork, an hour of supervision, and they kind of cluster it and write it down. Whatever way works for you that keeps it accurate. All of this information you will get your site supervisor to sign, and I would encourage you to at least have your site supervisor look over your hours at least once a month, and let them sign off. We do have a monthly summary, so once you've added up your daily, you move all of that to monthly, and the same categories are here. Actually, this is, so month 1, it's going to be January for you. You'll just add that up and be able to come over all the way to the semester total. One thing that you're going to notice over here in the box, there is a requirement of your 40 face-to-face hours. At least 40% of that needs to be individual time. So that's, for Practicum, it's 16 hours. So what we've done right here in this box is where you can add up your individual time, your family, couples, or other client contact. All of that needs to add up to 16 for Practicum. And hopefully it'll be a lot more. The reason for that is some sites are so heavy on group therapy that we didn't want you to only have group time. So we have the minimum for your individual time. All of your monthly stuff gets summarized over into your semester. Your site supervisor signs all of these. The faculty supervisor signs the monthly and the semester totals. We will keep a copy of your semester total at the end of the semester. That gets turned into us. What am I forgetting?
No, that's right.
Okay. Something that we've got as well, and this, especially if you're going to change sites, you're going to want to keep up with this as you go. But this is a year-to-date total. This will be, let's say you're applying for a licensure in a state and you need a summary document stating that you completed all of these hours. This is what that's going to look like. So, space for practicum, internship 2, internship continuation, and your totals. And each of these gets signed by your site and your faculty supervisor. So make sure if you're only going to be at your site for one semester that you go ahead and fill out this form at the end of practicum, and your practicum supervisor sign that. And you may want to print out a couple of copies of this and just have them sign extras, and that way if you lose one, you spill coffee on one, you're going to have a clean one by the end. Let's see. We do also have a demographic form that we like to see at the end of the semester as well. So when you turn in that final semester log, you'll also be turning in your demographic totals. That just helps us see what types of clients that you're seeing. One thing that you'll need to complete on each client is a client treatment summary. And even just this semester, I've reminded my students the other night, don't forget your treatment summaries have to be in your final notebook, and they all just got this like, forgot about that. I was like, the goal is every time you meet with a client for the very first time, you start a form on them. You're going to somehow code your client so that you can remember, but you don't want to have too much because it also has your work site. So if you put agape and you've got the date and you've got too much information about your client, somebody could theoretically, if they were a hacker, could get in and find that information. So you may just want to put a first initial, or you could even code them by numbers if you can remember. You're going to fill out as much as you can when you start. If you know the diagnosis, and I apologize, it still is DSM-4 on here. But if you fill out as much as you can up front, you may have to go back and change the diagnosis later if it changes. But at the end of the semester, you're going to fill in your treatment summary, or whenever you close out with that client. So if you close them out in March, go ahead and finish the treatment summary on that client. And within that, you're going to be writing, how many times did you see him, what was the general topics, what modality did you use, individual or group, maybe what theoretical orientation you're approaching that form. We did CBT or DBT, whatever. It doesn't have to be a ton, and the goal here is really for you to remember your clients. If you are applying for a job later and you're claiming to have some experience in PTSD, and you're interviewing and they say, well, how many clients have you seen that had PTSD? You can tell them an exact number. So we want you to remember your clients. It's also handy if you ever decide you want to teach one day, you can prompt some stories that you can remember. As far as evaluations go, we complete an evaluation of you at the end of the semester, but that's based on our observations and how you're performed in group and how well you've done on all your assignments, but it's also compiles the information from your site supervisor. So our rating form for the site supervisors looks like this. It's several categories covering assessment and diagnostics, therapeutic intervention, supervision, and ethical and professional behavior. So you're going to have your site supervisor fill this out at midterm and at the end of the semester. And we have to have that at the end so that we then can fill out our evaluation. So it's always due the last week of class or so, and that gives us time to go over it. Your site supervisor, I would encourage you to give them at least 2 weeks notice. Midterms in the spring is always, maybe the second week of March. I would start bringing it up even mid to late February and just tell them when you're going to need it. If they would prefer, they can go on the same website and they can download a Word version of this document that they can type into, or you can give them a paper, whichever they prefer. But don't wait till the last minute, and we don't wanna see a midterm evaluation dated April 1st, or, one in the fall dated mid-November, cause that doesn't really help us. I would rather err on the side of it being early than being late. Moving into our ethical and legal obligations with client data, you're going to be bringing us information about your clients. You're going to be presenting on your clients verbally. You're going to be bringing in written case conceptualizations. You'll bring in videos of sessions, and you'll bring in actual notes, progress notes from your site. All of this information technically should never leave a site. It's the site's responsibility to keep that information HIPAA compliant, keep it safe and confidential, and because they're agreeing to a training model, this kind of historically what sites do. They allow certain information to leave. That puts a lot of responsibility on you to be incredibly secure with that information. And even this semester, we've had 2 laptops stolen with client information on them. So we're working on a procedure to help you be more secure in transporting this information. But we cannot stress strongly enough how important you have to be very diligent about this. And we're going to talk about this again at Practicum Orientation.
Exactly.
But one of the things, just to go over the video, is we have consent forms. There's an adult version and a child version. Your site will likely have consent forms as well. Their version will stay in their file, and we need your version to stay in your notebook, but blacked out. Okay, so even last night I was looking at a student's notebook, and there was the client's name and the client's signature. Even though it really doesn't do any good to have it blacked out, as far as us knowing, yeah, you really got your client to sign it, we're trusting that obviously it is your client's signature, and we don't want to see their name. I don't want that in your notebook. So you can black it out down to just the first initial, so you can go, yeah, that was so-and-so's, black out that signature, but at least we know that you've gotten consent from your client. One more piece of evaluation, and then we'll just move totally into the security issues, is when we watch your video, one of the things that we use to give you feedback is the counseling competency scale, the first page, and it goes through actual clinical behaviors that you're doing in your video, like your nonverbal skills, your questioning strategy, reflections, confrontation, goal setting. So this is something that you might get feedback from your faculty supervisor, but your site supervisor is welcome to use this as well. And I don't actually think this is on the website. But if you want copies of it, you can get that from your faculty supervisor. I also use a rubric that Dr. Thomas created in combination with this. Have them copied front to back. So it may be a little bit different from faculty supervisor to faculty supervisor, but our goal is to give you a lot of feedback on your videos. Okay, so some more security issues.
Yeah, so one of the things that we recognize is that you are in training, and that part of that training is that we will participate as faculty supervisors in evaluating your work, even in writing, but also your in vivo through the videos that you will bring. So what we wanted to talk about is just a little bit about the security and the importance of keeping your client information safe. There are a couple of things that I want to make sure that we leave very clear. Anytime that you leave your site with that information, we want all information that can identify the client to be redacted. So if there is a name, if
Blacked
there is
out.
Exactly.
I had a student one day, what does redacted mean?
Exactly.
That's
So
the legal
blacked
word.
out. So we want you to make sure that any age, any names, or even additional information like
Where the parent
where the
works,
parent works and all those kinds
what
of
school
things.
they go to.
The
Just
school.
you could, you don't have
Yeah.
to say Glencliff High School. You can just say Metro, public high school,
Exactly.
something like that.
And if, let's say, you're bringing in something and you realize that it's already on the note, just black it out. Make sure that we or nobody would be able to figure it out, or basically, through that information to be able to connect the dots. So we want to make sure that you're blacking out not just the name, but any other information that could help identify that person. I think we talked a little bit earlier about even your site. It would be good for you not to bring a lot of those notes with, the letterhead of your site, if possible.
And if you're just copying an actual note on letterhead, just put a Post-it note over
Exactly.
the agape or whatever it is, and then make your copy. And we found the best way to redact is actually a two-stage process. There's two options that you've got. One would be a Sharpie does not work, so please do not bring in your notes just with a Sharpie, because if you tilt it just right, you can see that raised print. You can totally read it. So you can either use a Sharpie and then make a copy of that, and that perfectly blacks it out. The other thing that I've found that works is if you take a Sharpie and then you take a ballpoint and you just scribble over that, you can get all that indentation out and you can't see it. Either way, you've got to do two things to get it perfectly redacted.
So these are all things that you would do at the site before you ever leave. Now, as soon as you go to your car, let's say you have all this information on your backpack, we want you to put that on your trunk, the trunk of your car. Part of what we wanted, the security of this process is it should not be viewable. So if somebody walks by your car and sees your backpack in the back of your car, that would not be safe enough. So you want to make sure that if you have this information with you, nobody can see it. Nobody is able to see that information. So, and let's say the standard is to have two locks. So it's, let's say if it's something that's in your computer, you're gonna have to have, it protected so that there will be two locks between somebody and your computer.
So you can think about that as your trunk is a lock. Maybe you even invest in a bag that has a lock.
Exactly.
Or if you've got your trunk and then you've got your computer has a password, then that counts as a lock. Any of your client, say you've written up a case conceptualization, you can put a password through Word on that document so that you have to put in your password to open the document. So that creates a third lock for you. Forgot something else I was going to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, another part of that would be, making sure that any documents are stored and secured. You also have to do the same thing with any videos, and that would include the place you record your video. That can be your phone or your iPad or your camera. That would be under the same type of security. And then if you transfer that to your computer, you also have to maintain that with that level of security. It is very important that you delete and don't store videos for long periods of time. Our recommendation, we were talking about it, don't keep more than one video. And if you do save a video on your computer, have a date in which you're going to delete it on a regular basis. So on a weekly basis, you go through that file and you delete any videos that have been used in supervision or that you do not plan to use. That's very important that you keep up with that, and I would say on a weekly basis.
Right. And you may say, I want a video this week with my client, and then we want to see any type of video, even if you get done with that session, because students are tempted to go, that one was really bad. I think I'll tape another one and try to get a better video. We don't care about that. We're not looking for a perfect performance, because one, there is no perfect performance. Therapy can look 1,000 different ways with the same 5-minute scenario. So we're looking to see just you in action, and that's what the group is for, to give you the kind of feedback even on what you feel like is a bad video. And I've had students come in and go, this is the worst I've ever done. And I honestly, this summer, told a student, that's better than anything you've showed me so far. It was her 4th video, and she swore it was the worst, and it was literally the best. So there's no need for you to record multiple sessions for you to get a good session. Just record one, bring it for class and delete it. You know, and sometimes students also, you know, there are technology glitches and we've had things, so I can understand somebody maybe keeping a second one. But you do definitely no more than 2 videos saved anywhere. And I would prefer that you not use your phone. Even though the phone works, it'll if you have enough storage, it'll record a 60-minute session, but your phone is probably the least secure thing that you have. One, you carry it everywhere you go. It's probably in your pocket, your jacket pocket, you throw it around. You may have a password on it, but that's it. You know, you have your password and then you get right into your photos and videos and anybody can see it. So that's really not the best way to go. People use their iPads, which is actually probably equally insecure. But at least maybe you're not throwing that one around, you know, holding it while you're jogging and, you know, that kind of thing. Ideally, you would have a camera that you would download immediately to your computer and then delete it off the camera, off the little flash, so that's ideally only living in one place at a time.
And I think at the end of the day, a recognition that this is very private information that we are carrying, that our clients, they signed a release because they believe in our training. Our supervisors, we have close relationships with them, and they're allowing us to do this, allowing you to do that, because they believe in training and they want you to gain the most out of your training. So because of all that trust, because they're trusting us so much, we want to make sure that we take very, very good care of that information and that we respect their privacy just as we would, you know, if we were talking to somebody about our day, we would not talk about our clients. So we want to make sure that that information is safe and secure.
Right. And another way to think about it too is it hurts. It may, even though maybe it happens to you, you know, you're out all that money, all that information on your computer, plus your client data, what the backlash of that's going to be, I'm afraid, the 2 computers that were stolen this semester both had clients from the same site. 2 different people, 2 different semesters, but the same site, probably because that student didn't delete old videos, so she had something months old on her computer. Sites could very well say, you know what, we'll have interns, but we're not going to video anymore. And if we have sites that don't allow videoing, then we're going to have less sites. So there's going to be ramifications on all students if we can't prove that we're trustworthy with the client information, because it puts the site at risk for lawsuits. They have promised their clients a certain level of confidentiality, and so they're violating that. We're violating that. And my fear is that this particular site is, because it happens to be the police department, I will not be surprised at all if they say, you know, we're not going to allow videos anymore. So then it comes down to, are we willing to go observe you, or watch, if you can maybe video there, we go observe the video there. You lose that feedback that you would get in a group supervision setting. Anyway, I mean, it's a very real possibility that this could affect how sites, what they're going to let us do. So we'll talk about this again at orientation. We're working on some more definite plans to help with this, but we can't stress it enough to be very diligent. Don't leave that bag. Even though they can't see your computer laying in your car, it's in your nice bag, you know. And right now it's Christmas season, people are snatching stuff like crazy. You don't want to tempt them to break into your car and lose your bag. So even if you have an SUV, like I don't have one of those things that covers the trunk in my SUV, you know, keep an old towel in there and cover it up so people aren't tempted. Just even if you're, you know, I mean, I'm trying to do the same thing now. Even though I don't have client stuff on my computer, I do have plenty of important K-Crep related stuff. So I've thought, okay, I need to be doing this better myself. So I'm trying to retrain myself to put it in the trunk.
Yes. So that's all I have.
Is that it? Okay.